Sandra Vanessa here, and welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to talk about what it's like to have a yeast allergy. I just recently found out that I am sensitive to brewer's yeast, and yeah, it's been a journey ever since. I did a blog post and I've done a couple of videos featuring grocery shopping with me and what I buy and different things like that. Those links will be down below, so if you're interested in watching to see what it's like, a couple of things that I've learned that have drastically altered my life and lifestyle, then keep on watching. So first things first, I did my food allergen sensitivity test through my naturopathic doctor, who did it through the IgG ELISA or whatever, 184 food panel. I'll put it right down here, whatever it is. And so due to this test, it was concluded, so they rate things between a 0 and a 3 on the sensitivity scale, and brewer's yeast was a 3 on the scale. I believe that was the second highest thing that came up on my sensitivity. So that was very interesting. So yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll put the name of the info and I'll put it down below. And I just asked my doctor, and it was a blood test, and they tested my blood, and how, I believe how she said it is that it shows how my body will process the protein within these foods, I believe is how she explained it. And yeah, so if you're interested, if you find you have sensitivities, if you have an irritability symptom, or constantly feel like you're being bloated by something and you're not really sure what it is, I would highly encourage you to go see your doctor. That's what I did. I had spent years having bloating issues without ever knowing the cause of it, and since taking this test and doing a bit more research, I have eliminated a step further a major sense of bloating. So yeah, all right. To get back into the things that I learned, but I just want to let you guys know how I got the test, how I even found out about it. It took a couple of days for the test to get back, and then we went over it in my next appointment with my doctor, and from there on I went home and I did some research and gathered some more tidbits and knowledge, did a bit of trial and error, which I'm still kind of in, and yeah. All right, now to progress forward. You've heard me mention the language that I use. I've been saying I'm sensitive to brewer's yeast. I don't know if you knew this, but there are different types of yeast. There are brewer's yeast and baker's yeast, and I came to find later that some industries and companies use a mixture of both to create just a generic yeast. Interesting. And so in doing this, I found out that there's not a lot of research in separating the two types of yeast. According to a couple of different articles that I read on different websites, that a lot of people, it's assumed that if they're sensitive to one yeast, they're sensitive to the other. So brewer's yeast is used to make alcohol, vinegars, ciders, wines, beers. Let's see. And baker's yeast is more used to make baking things. However, a lot of companies use brewer's yeast, or that generic yeast, in reference to a lot of breads, a lot of other things, because a lot of companies either use some sort of combination. If anything is labeled just a generic yeast, it's assumed that it's a combination of both, or that it is not just baker's yeast solely. I've been very lucky that I actually found a bread local to me that specifies that they use baker's yeast in their bread, but so far it's been one company that I've been found, and most others that have yeast just say yeast, and so I'm like, oh, and I end up all bloated, and it's a whole other thing. So baker's yeast is used for a lot of baking things, a lot of any other thing that needs to yeast that isn't necessarily vinegars or cooking. And that's the thing. So I'm stumbling upon trying to figure out the separation between the two because there's a significant lack of research and tests that separates the two. It's just clumped together. The industry also just labels yeast, like a lot of products that are in the grocery store that just say yeast, just thrown into a lot of pre-prepared foods. There's no distinct guarantee on what type it is unless they specify brewer's yeast or baker's yeast. However, general understanding is that brewer's yeast is used to make all types of alcohols, ciders, wines, beers, liquors, a lot of fermented things, all of that type of stuff. So also vinegars. My doctor did tell me I could have pure distilled white vinegar, that it didn't have any yeast. So in going off of that, so I'm allergic to alcohol. I'm sensitive, allergic, I don't know, depending on the language you want to use. I can't drink alcohol. I get really bloated. It is miserable. It is so upsetting. So if those that are lactose intolerant, that don't eat dairy, when you eat dairy again, and that feeling of your stomach and that really big gassy pain and uncomfortableness, that's how I feel when I drink alcohol. Luckily, I'm fortunate that I don't like alcohol, so it wasn't a big deal for me to not want to drink it. But I am 23 years old. This is quote unquote my prime drinking years. This is the prime time of socializing through alcoholic mixtures. It's just the time. It's the time. A lot of people are like, let's go to bars, let's go to this, go to that. I'm always a designated driver, forever and always more. I am now a designated driver. But yeah, so it works out. I've never really been a fan of alcohol, but what really was gun-wrenching was that I can't have the Martinelli's non-alcoholic cider. I'm so sad because that was my favorite during Thanksgiving and Christmas time. I might honestly still have a cup just to, for old time's sake, for the festivities. But yeah, no alcohol for me. 23, so I'm kind of like, but at the same time, I'm like, whatever. I'm not haven't been a big drinker like ever. I didn't party in high school, and just hasn't always been my thing. I've much more been one to enjoy in some medical and recreational cannabis to just kind of elevate myself and calm myself and enlighten. So teach their own. Oh, another type of yeast that I didn't mention earlier is nutritional yeast. I have felt hurt. There have been a lot of things that I feel have been stripped from me in this diet. I mentioned in my blog post, feel free to read it if you're interested in learning more about this. So I am plant-based. I have been for the last year and a half. And in that transition, I have never felt excluded. I have never felt like I didn't have options, especially the area that I live in, the area that I grew up in. It's plentiful with vegan options, plentiful with vegan gluten-free options when I thought that I was, gluten sensitive. And that's another topic that we'll get into. But in doing all of that, I never felt excluded from options, from restaurant eating, different things like that. And with a yeast sensitivity, that's a whole other thing, because for those that don't know, most vegan cheeses are made with a nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is a huge thing in the vegan community. Noosh. It's cheesy, it's delicious, it's nutritional in value, it's this, that, and the next. So a lot of my favorite foods had to go. Most vegan cheeses I cannot eat. I know Miyoko's cheese doesn't have, or the mozzarella one, it doesn't have any yeast in it. But other than that, like if it's any sort of cheesy flavored cheese, which I can eat all cheese is cheese, but like I said, the mozzarella is like a different type of flavor. But anything going for the cheddar, it probably has nutritional yeast in it. And so I either get really bloated or I do what I should do and not eat it. So that's been really hard to go with the adjustment. The gravy I used to love to eat, the vegan one that I found out here, no. It has yeast in it, nutritional yeast specifically, and a lot of the sauces that we've used, and what else? there's so many things that we had to like swap out, or I've had to give up and let Angel eat still, and just, it's been an interesting thing in that regard. It's been a process. There's been some tears, there's been some frustration, there's been fits, there's been times where I say fuck it and I eat it anyways because fuck it. And I've had to pay the consequences of it a couple of times. I mentioned a little bit ago that I thought that I had a sensitivity to gluten. So something that I figured out in my midst of researching and talking to my doctor and just a lot of my own general conclusions is that I may not be, well, according to the test here, I am not sensitive to gluten, to wheat, to all of that. I have no sensitivity to. So I found it very interesting. Yeah, wheat is a 0 and gluten are a 0 on this list. So my doctor said to try out my discretion, see how I feel. My body might just naturally prefer to operate from a place of a gluten-free lifestyle, and it's up to me whether I consume gluten or not. So I have been testing that back into my life because I realized the connection with my own diet that a lot of other people experience is that the products that they think that they are sensitive to because of the gluten, they're actually sensitive to because of the yeast within that product. And most products that have gluten also have yeast in it. There tend to be a pair in a lot of products such as bread and different things like that, which are the things that cause people to have inklings that they're sensitive to gluten. So that was me. I took out gluten, felt a lot better. I still was being bloated when I ate things, so that's what took me to go see my doctor to get this test done. Come to find out, it's sensitive to yeast. So then I realized even in my gluten-free products, they still had yeast in it, especially nutritional yeast. So I had to evaluate that and figure out how I felt about all of that and rearrange my diet. There's been a lot of research, a lot of testing that has been taking place over the last like 2 to 3 months in my life as I've been figuring all this out, coming to terms with it, doing the reflection, the coping, and all of that, because it's quite a large lifestyle change. There's a lot of foods that I can't order in the store because it's another thing of how deep does this go. So they said that I am sensitive to yeast, but a lot of people that are sensitive to yeast is because they are sensitive to mold. So how deep does it go? So am I sensitive to citric acid, which I found I might be getting bloated from that, and I'm like, because of those that you don't know, citric acid isn't in a production scale, not lemon and lime. Citric acid is a concentrated mold, so a lot of people that are sensitive to mold can't have things that are processed with citric acid because of that. So just finding those things like that, basically just being on top of noticing citric acid. I'm wondering how deep does it go? Am I sensitive to mushrooms? And that's a personal thing that like I gotta figure out, but it's just a matter of wondering, breaking all of those things down and figuring out what can I eat, what can I not eat, what causes the sensitivity within just knowing I'm sensitive to brewer's yeast, because brewer's yeast versus baker's yeast. So if I'm sensitive to one, then not the other. How sensitive is my mold sensitivity? These are the questions that I ask myself when I go deep into, so no need to worry about all of that. But I did want to address, in case there's anyone else who is sensitive to one thing or another. I think I maybe read 1 or 2 short articles or blog posts rather of people that experience this, and I felt very like lack of resources of figuring out other people with that same thing. So that's why I kind of wanted to come on here, and I've been documenting my journey. I wrote a blog post, and I've been doing a couple of grocery hauls and grocery shopping videos, and I will continue to integrate that, continue to integrate these discussions of things like this, of what have I discovered, what am I noticing about my journey with baker's versus brewer's yeast, and what is brewer's yeast found in, what's the separation, and how far can you go with something that's just generically labeled yeast, although disclaimer, everything just labeled yeast, assume that it's not safe. But in wondering all this and figuring all this out, it's definitely being integrated into my passion. I'm going back to school. I'm going to school to study holistic nutritionist and become a nutritionist. So it's definitely something that I'm now taking into account for myself, for opportunities for future clients and things of that nature, because in me looking it up, I very much wished I had found more information about it. So I definitely would like to input my journey into the discussion of options of, hey, this is what kind of happens, this is what may happen. A couple of small things that I've noticed is eating out seems to be more difficult. I basically either get something that's really clean, something that's really safe. I'm that person that asks a lot of questions about what's in it, or I come to the conclusion that I'm going to end up cheating on my diet or make a choice that isn't as best and eat something that has yeast in it and end up feeling bloated or whatnot later. So that's something that I've noticed, is eating out isn't as simple as before. Finding research separating the two, like I said, has been an interesting feat. Dissecting, because you get in the rabbit hole of being all yeast products, that's so many more things that you have to eliminate than brewer's yeast versus baker's yeast, because so many more things are made with baker's yeast exclusively than brewer's yeast. So finding that separation, also in an industry that likes to cut corners, and finding out that if you mix the two types of yeast, it is a cheaper cost for the company producing it. That discretion, figuring it all out, adjusting to all that, the research, I can get down a rabbit hole really quick. So my partner very much advises me to kind of take my steps, tiptoe with it, because I will fall all the way down that rabbit hole, end up in Wonderland, and wonder what I can eat. But it has caused me to focus on a lot of whole food, plant-based diet foods, getting creative, coming up with new things, eating a lot of the vegetables in the foods, how it's meant to be eaten, and different things like that. A lot less processed foods, a lot less store-bought foods is the direction in which we have to go. Another thing is cleaning the house more, something that we started to do more just to be proactive. If I am sensitive to mold and we don't want any sort of mold to be in the house. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and mold is very common and something that can be found in a lot of places, and just something is just very common because it's wet, it's cold, not summer right now, but in the fall and winter time. So we clean the bathroom more. We are much more on top of our food, what's in the fridge, making sure dishes are done, making sure trash gets taken out before it starts molding. Those are things that I recognized and we integrate into our lives. Okay, I think that's everything. I was a bit more sporadic in this video than I thought I was going to be, so I may refilm this. Probably will just go out as is and just be authentic and genuine to how I'm feeling and what's going on. We shall see. Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching, for subscribing, for liking. If you enjoy content like this, feel free to subscribe and join. My website down below, Total Wellness Mind Body Spirit, is available. I do lifestyle blog posts, I have lifestyle products, spiritual tools, I do energy work such as tarot readings, helping you get comfortable with your own intuitive abilities, and a couple of other things that I do. So check that out if you're interested. Like I said, I'll be documenting my journey on this yeast discovery here and over on my blog channel, or here and over on my website. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in and spending time with me. I wish you all a beautiful day, and know that you are not alone if you're experiencing yeast sensitivity and feeling a bit overwhelmed. We'll get through this together, and we'll figure out and we'll enjoy our food one way or another. I promise you that. Peace and many beautiful blessings to you all. Bye.